All right, guys, welcome back to another episode. Today's all about brakes. Quick overview of the truck. We've got 4-wheel drum brakes, no surprise there. Current status of the brakes is basically nothing. So the pedal goes right to the floor. It does move, which is good, but nothing there. Emergency brakes, I've got this mechanical lever which goes to under the car, pure mechanical linkage to a drum, if you will, internal drum outboard of the transmission. And that's just clamping on the transmission there. I'm not gonna tackle that at all today. I'm gonna focus on the drum brakes. Right there is the single master cylinder. It looks like it hasn't been touched in decades. So I'm gonna start by cracking that and seeing what's inside. I have looked around the truck. It looks like all the brake components are there. I don't see any rust in the lines, cracks in the rubber hoses. Brakes are pretty important. I'm not planning on running it as is if it works. I'm definitely gonna go through stuff, but I do wanna understand the current status and see if I can get anything with the hardware that's there. So let's do it. I had no response from pumping the pedal a couple times. Fluid didn't move or anything, so I ended up taking the cylinder out completely. It still looks kind of clean in there, but there's some passageways that are clogged up. So I got to figure out whether I want to rebuild this thing or just buy a new one, which they are readily available. So I'm going to dig in a little bit more. I am in the garage with Richie here, an old colleague and good friend. We're going to dig into the brakes and figure out if we can actually even get the wheels off and see what's going on in there. So stick with us. One thing I have been doing since I got the truck was actually spraying down all the lug nuts with PB Blaster because they look like they're pretty rusty, and actually one of the studs is broken in the back. So trying to get ahead of the game. The other thing which I'll point out on the old Internationals, on the driver's side, they are righty loosey, lefty tighty, which I found out on the Scout the hard way. Didn't break anything, but I found out the hard way. So I did double check. You can actually see the stampings here, which I'll zoom in on in a second, that show that these are lefty loosey. So we're gonna, righty loosey. So it's gonna look like we're actually trying to tighten these things, but we're actually trying to loosen them. That'd be funny if this one actually just pops right. Nope. Heat. And go for it. I've been struggling for the last day and a half since Reggie was here, trying to get the drums off of Wally back there. This is not a drum, this is a disc brake that came in the bed of Wally. Not sure why exactly, but just to explain a little bit what I'm trying to do. Imagine this is a drum, the hub sits behind it, and the studs actually stick out in these holes. And it's not atypical that a drum or a disc would actually get kind of frozen to the hub behind it. And that's, this inner surface here that's rusts and seizes to the hub. Typically with a disc, you can kind of get there behind it with a hammer because you're not worried about damaging the disc because you're replacing it usually. And you can kind of hammer it off, or they make big pullers that you can pull it. I probably can find a puller that would fit those big drums over there, but it'd be a couple $100. And I don't want to wait. I'm impatient and I want to try to get it done. So I'm gonna do something that I've done before, or that I have experienced before. When I actually was changing brakes on my Subaru that had disc brakes, they actually had what I'll call like courtesy holes. They had a hole here that were threaded. I think they were M8 by 1.25, and they were meant to, instead of pull the disc brake off, you would actually just thread an M8 bolt through there and kind of push it off. As you can see, the drums here do have 2 holes in them. They're not threaded because it's pretty thin. It's probably 1/10 of an inch, so I can't thread them. But I'm going to do essentially put threads on there. I'm gonna take those two holes in the drums there and weld a nut on them, and then actually have a bolt and just try to push it off. You can also see here that it looks like someone may have actually tried to hammer this drum off, and that's what this crack is. I'm gonna try to not do that. So let's see if this welding a nut and putting a bolt through actually works. I was able to get it welded on there, and I was able to get weld on 4 of the 6 sides. I just couldn't get the torch on the inside, and started torquing that thing, and I thought things were going well, and then it kind of bulged out this surface here. I don't know if you can tell. Didn't get much separation of the drum at all, so I gotta think of another method. It's back to the drawing board. So after doing some research and talking to some people, it sounds like the drum almost never comes out by itself, and it's kind of fused to the hub via the splines on the studs. So I did break down and get a bearing puller that hopefully will help. So let's see if I can get the hub and drum off. I just turned the camera off because I didn't know what to do. I applied a little bit of heat right here and it popped, and it pops really loud. So, wish I had the camera on for that one. Let's see. Now it looks like it's coming off pretty easy. Woo, that was kind of scary. Oh, now you're not gonna come off. There we go. Woo. Looks like everything's there. Tons of cobwebs and other stuff. Shoes have plenty of meat on them. Drums definitely look like they've been worn, so we'll have to determine whether those are usable or not. But I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up a little bit and see if I can get a better sense of how all the different components are in there. All right, back in the shop, working on the brakes, made progress. We've got all of the drums off. Some were harder than others. Sweet. And it looks like I'm gonna do a full brake job, replacing pretty much everything, including the steel brake lines, because we just broke one. So got a lot of work ahead of us, but right now we're gonna just take everything off, brake lines, everything, and then start piecing stuff back together before we can reassemble and bleed the brakes. All right, I am back on it. Today I'm gonna actually try to replace all of the hardware on this front driver's side wheel. I've actually done all other corners of the vehicle. If you're keeping up with the episodes, because I'm kind of shuffling back and forth a little bit, I have just taken the rear axle out. See, no axle there, differentials out there. And unfortunately, I actually did a lot of the brakes here and I had to take them off, but no big deal. But I'm back here, and first step is I'm gonna actually take all this stuff off so that I can clean it up a little bit and put the new hardware on. Very high level drum brakes are different than today's conventional disc brakes. Instead of a disc rotating and calipers clamping on the disc, it still uses hydraulics. So you have your wheel cylinder here that's connected to the master cylinder and the brake pedal, but it actually pushes these two shoes, or in this case, one shoe, into the drum. Now that's a question. I still don't understand why on the front brakes there's only one piston here on the wheel cylinder as opposed to the rear where they have 2 cylinders. So if you know, feel free to comment below. It seems like it doesn't really make sense. Anyway, I'm going to replace everything here except for this adjuster down here. And what this does is when the shoes start to wear, there's a little slot back here where you can actually adjust and push these apart so that you're trying to get even wear on the shoes as you put miles on it. So first step is gonna be really quick and easy because I'm not saving really anything here. I'm just gonna cut everything off, clean it all up, and then get ready to start reassembling. So let's do it. So I did just spend some time cleaning up the spindle. I'll probably clean it up again before I put the hubs back on, which I am going to do new bearings and everything. Just wanted to get the bulk of the grease off, which is a lot easier when there's no brakes there. The other thing I'm going to actually pay attention to are there's a couple of these kind of flat like plateaus up here, and that's where the shoes actually rest against. They're pulled up against there. And so each corner I've been looking at kind of the state of those, which none of them really look that worn. If they were, I would have to probably do something, but I am going to clean them up a little bit, take as much of the rust and try to start with a clean surface there. Anyone that's used brake clean before knows what it smells like right now. You get a little lightheaded. So this is looking pretty good. All right, now I got this pretty clean. I am going to get all the parts ready to assemble. As I mentioned before, everything's going to be new except for this guy, which is the adjuster for the bottom of the drums, which is actually 3 parts. None of them are moving nicely together. This is supposed to be able to rotate out. It's threaded in there. That's what gives you the adjustment. And then this cap is supposed to be free of here, but it looks like it's rusted on there. And that moves back and forth so it can rotate and it doesn't want to twist the 2 shoes relative to each other. So I do have to take this apart and clean it up, grease it up. The other thing, these parts, which are basically spacers that live up here, that keep the shoes up against there. This one actually looks okay, but all of the other ones were either worn because they were out of position, or when I was taking them out, I bent them. So what I ended up doing was actually taking some measurements, designing them in CAD, and then 3D printing them here just to see if they work and everything fits, which they do. And then at work, we have a massive water jet table. So I got the hookup at work and was able to water jet 4 new ones that look like this, same thickness and everything. So probably didn't need to do it for this one, but I had 4 made, and it'll be nice to just have a new piece on there, not rusted out or anything. So I'll get the parts ready to put everything back on. I'll get this wheel adjuster going, and let's get everything on. All right, now for the reassembly. I'm gonna make it look nice and easy because this is literally my 4th corner. Thank you, Tyson, for doing the first corner with me, figuring it out. Now, yeah, I can make it look easy, but it takes a little bit of thinking, a little bit of hoping and praying and hoping a spring doesn't go in your eye. But once you do it a couple times, it's pretty straightforward. Hopefully I'm not jinxing it right now. So my phone died when I was finishing up the brakes the other night. I was able to get the adjuster in there, so this side is all done. A couple things have also transpired over the past couple days, which is kind of exciting. So I do have an axle on the way from Missouri. Who knows when it's going to come, hopefully in a week or so. So I got to really focus on getting that prepped, which right now is just PB blasting, spraying the U-bolts and some other stuff. But really what I want to do is I want to get the front end down on the lift, because the way I currently have it is a little sketchy, which means I got to do some work on the front hubs. I did get all new bearings, races, and seals. I'm still waiting for one felt seal, which are hard to come by nowadays. So I'm gonna get that fitted on both sides, get the studs pressed in. That way I can get the drums and the hubs put on. And then I'm actually gonna install some different wheels and tires, which you can see here. So these are wheels and tires that came on the Scout when I actually bought it. I changed them to the Wranglers there. They probably have a couple hundred miles at the most. It is a different bolt pattern, so I did get some spacers to be able to make these fit. Ultimately, I am gonna use these wheels. I'm gonna have to fix that one with the crack. But for timing and for money, I'm just gonna get these good tires on so I can get it running, inspected, all that type of stuff. So again, front brakes are ready to go. I just gotta get some stuff to get the hubs back on, wheels and tires, get this down on the ground so I can get ready to put the back axle on. So now I'm gonna work on popping out races and bearings from the front hubs. They actually have like two, I don't know how easy it's gonna see, but two cutaways in the casting that allow you to actually hammer down on the races. So I got to find those, make sure I'm hammering on those, and then tap away. So the seats actually don't look, or the races don't actually look that bad, but there's a little bit of wear there. If I'm going to replace the bearings, might as well replace the seats as well. These actually look in pretty good shape. Maybe some signs of some wear, but oh well. Everything's gonna be new. I'm gonna clean these hubs up, focus on pressing the seats back in, getting the bearings lubed up and in there, and getting the studs pressed in as well. And then I can throw it back on Wally. I'm in the basement with Jim and Jimmy here. Jim's got a pretty sweet setup. He's in a similar boat as me. He's got a mill and a lathe, pretty sweet lathe actually, and some other goodies including a hydraulic press, which is what I'm using today. He's also in the same state as that he doesn't have stuff hooked up yet. Actually he does. He has a VFD hooked up, or was hooked up here to run this, but you're gonna do a 3-phase for the lathe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But you know what gets in the way of all that stuff is kids. Kids. But what we're gonna do now is use the press to get the studs in and the bearing races in. And Jimmy has been looking at this red machine, I guess, for a couple years, wondering what it does. So he's gonna watch it, right? Jimmy?
What?
Pretty easy, straightforward stuff. Got all the studs pressed in there without any issue. Next, I'm going to be pressing the bearing races in both ends for the tapered bearings. I am going to take advantage of freezer here. I've had the races in the freezer for a little bit just to get them as cold as possible. And then I'm going to heat the hub up a little bit just to get as much CTE in both ways as possible. And I do have the right size sockets that should make it easier to just press in.
Oh!
next step is to grease the bearings, get the hub all set. I know there are some different methods to do this. I think there's actually like a machine or some type of apparatus that you can do this with, but this is the way I've done it, and this is the way I'm going to do it today. Basically, take the clean bearing, get the hub ready or whatever you're putting in, take a glob of grease, it's probably too much, put it in your hand. You're basically gonna kind of do like a rotation and a slide action, because essentially what you want to do is you want to get the grease in all of the little pockets there. So I don't know, whatever methodology kind of works for you, but that's what works for me. Once you got it nice and greased up, you can just drop it right in the race. I also got to put the seal in, and actually what came out of here was what looks like kind of like solid, actually I don't know what it is. It's something two-part, can't really tell. But looking up replacements, it's also two-part, but it's a seal housing and then some felt. So I'm going to press that in there. She looks pretty thick. And it just goes in here. Grease up the other bearing. Yeah. By the way, multi-purpose. Disc brake, wheel bearings, chassis, suspension, universal joints. I've had this for decades, probably. All right, let's get this back on the spindle. All right, so we got to put the hub with the bearings back on, and it should just slide back on. Now, there is no torque spec on this, but what I've done and what I've seen done is you want to get it fully seated first. And to do that, I will torque it. I will use a wrench. I wouldn't be able to I wouldn't be able to turn that with my hands probably, so I'm going to get it kind of fully seated. It's nice and easy. Okay, now I've got to a stopping point there. I'm going to rotate it a little bit just to get the bearing rotated. That actually seems a little tight to me. So now that I know it's fully seated, I will back it out just a little bit. So that, again, it's kind of, you can rotate it with your fingers. And then I'm just gonna get it tight enough to a spot with my fingers where I can get the cotter pin in. So it's either that or that, and I kind of liked this one before. That's finger tight. Still, it's definitely not grindy or anything. And this is something that you can and you should, once in a while, go in and check to see if it's loosened up at all. And if so, then you just adjust it. This cotter pin is a little bit long. The next shorter one I have in my set is a little bit short. So I'm just going to stick with this one. Bend this over. And there's a dust cap or bearing cap that goes on that, so that's going to prevent it from rotating. So that's good. So now we just got to throw the drum on there. My fancy new drums here. Seems tight. Too tight. Way too tight. I know that's adjusted. All right, that drum is not going on there. I have no idea why. I just tried to measure the OD, and by the way, this is fully compressed, squeezed together. The springs are pulling it, but I even with some clamps, I tried to press this in. This star adjuster is as compressed as it's going to be. I tried to measure this with a tape measure, it didn't work very well. I do have access to this big axe, this big caliper here. So, and the nominal is 12 inches, so it should be under 12, hopefully. I'll make sure I'm getting the max OD. And I'm getting about, oof, that's big. If you can see that. 12 and 92 thousandths. So that's big. So then the other question is, how big is this drum, which also should nominally be 12. Let's see if I can measure this guy without killing anything. So I'm getting 11. I gotta add 8/10 of an inch here. So 11, 139. Is that right? So that'd be 11, 939. Well, that's why it doesn't fit. This seems to be undersized. These shoes, when they're installed, are oversized. So, all right, I'm definitely scratching my head on this one. Not too surprised. Another kind of par for the course with trying to put together parts to an old vehicle here. A couple options I can think of right off the top of my head. One is get the drums turned down a little bit. And there is plenty of meat to do that. That's probably the simplest thing to do. Even if I had my lathe up and running, I probably wouldn't do it here because they make like specialty machines to do that. So I'm sure there's a local place around here that might do that for me. So that's one option. Second option I was thinking was, hold on a second. So I have some hardware here that I can explain kind of what I'm thinking here. I could potentially remove some material of this half moon and that half moon so that when it sits here, it's a little bit closer, and then I could kind of take some material off of here and here where that star adjuster is going. That seems like a decent option. I know that people can actually, you can actually take material off of your drum lining or your shoe lining. It's another option. It's like always something. I got a noodle on this one, but I gotta get these brakes on so that I can get this thing down because the axle's coming soon, and I want the front end down on the ground. So Google time, YouTube time, try to figure out what other people have done, and then I'm back at it. So stay tuned. Back at it. It's been a couple days, but I got a solution. Short story is I got the drums turned. Longer story is I think I figured out what's going on, and this might be interesting to some of you guys who are trying to put together new drum parts on old vehicles. Apparently back in the day when shoes and drums were the prevalent braking solution before disc brakes, you could actually specify if you wanted oversized shoes, 10 thou, 20 thou, 30 thou over, assuming that you were just going to turn the drums. And that's kind of similar to like if you're rebuilding an engine, right? You can specify 20 thou, 30 thou, 40 thou over on the piston because you're going to actually remove the material from the cylinder that's not as smooth as it once was. But nowadays, they don't do that. Or at least I haven't seen that, where you can buy nominally sized shoes, assuming that you're getting new drums. So the place that I bought them from kind of confirmed this, but they didn't have a good solution other than, oh, you can just return everything. But that doesn't help because I couldn't find them anywhere else. I did also look a little bit more into removing material from the shoes themselves, and there's a process called arcing, in which you take the shoe, you put it on a machine that has a pivot that rotates back and forth, and while it's doing that, it presses up against a grinder, and it removes material. They don't do that anymore, or I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could find someone to do it. They stopped doing that because those brake shoes used to have asbestos in them, and they didn't want asbestos dust everywhere, so they just don't do that anymore. So that's why I kind of landed on turning the drums. And I did find a garage not too far away that I knew did that, turn drums and rotors. I brought it there. It was pretty clear they didn't really want to do it. A, they were busy. B, they typically just turn drums and rotors minimally, just take off what they need to. So when I asked them to actually turn them to a specific inner dimension or inner diameter, they're kind of like, we don't really do that. And it's going to cost you a ton of money, a couple $100. I kind of took that as a hint and I took another path. So I called my local Napa place and they came through again. Apparently they're like the last Napa or the only Napa within hundreds of miles that actually still turns drums and rotors. And there's one guy that knows how to do it. It's this guy BK here. And when I first went in there and brought him all this stuff, they're like, oh, you just missed BK. He'll be back next week. I was super bummed. And so then, a second later, the back door closes and he walks, waddles up to the front. And I tell him what I'm trying to do, and to be honest, I lost confidence immediately. This old timer guy who seemed to know what he was doing, but I brought out the calipers and he was like, what are those? And I was like, oh geez. So he was like, look, super nice guy. I got his whole life story while I was there. But he's like, listen, let's do one together. Let's get one to the point where you're happy with it. And then I guarantee I will get the rest to the same inner diameter. I was there for 2 hours with him as we got that first one tuned in. It turned out awesome, dead nuts where I wanted it. And then I left the 3 with him and I went to work. And I was kind of nervous that was going to come back and it was going to be a disaster. But he killed it. He got all 4 of them within 10 thou of each other. I did leave the calipers there. And I told him how to use them, but he killed it. And he only charged me $20 a drum, which I felt bad about, and I gave him a pretty big tip. I gave him a pretty big tip. All right, now I'm rambling because I'm excited. So I got to get these drums back on so that I can actually lower the truck with wheels and tires down, because the new axle, or the new used axle, is sitting at FedEx only a couple miles away. And I'm going to go pick that up tomorrow so that I can start installing it. So I really got to get these wheels and tires down on the ground immediately. If that can happen, that's going to conclude this episode, which is probably going to be called Brakes Part 1 or something, so that I can get the axle on and do Brakes Part 2 and get this truck running and out of the garage. So fingers crossed this thing actually goes together and I can move on to the next stage. Before I go warp speed ahead on this stuff, I am going to just point out that these studs that I put in here are still splined at the very edge. And that was the whole reason why I had to get a bearing puller to pull the drum and the hub off. I did consider actually opening the holes up here so I can more easily take this on and off. I'm just going to go with it as is, so it's going to take me probably a couple times to get this fully seated on there and pressed on there. And then I'm also going to put on this wheel spacer, which is also an adapter. So it's going to go from 5 by 4.5 to 5 by 5.5, which is what I have for older Scout wheels with brand new tires, because I'm not ready to put the original wheels and tires back on, which I will do eventually. So let's do it. So you can see here the spline actually goes through the drum altogether. And I basically had to use this spacer or this adapter as a spacer to make sure that the nut wasn't bottoming out, which it was before. So I'm just checking here to make sure that there's no real gap here. You probably remember this from the beginning of the episode. So that looks like it's actually pretty full seated. So now I'll put this back on for real, put the wheel on, put the dust cap back on, and then lower this thing. Mission accomplished. We got the front down on the lift in a much more sturdy position so that I can actually turn to the axle and start tearing that down and putting a new one in. I'm kind of digging the white wall tires here. These are temporary, not forever, but they will be on there when I get the truck inspected because I'm not quite ready to get the old wheels ready for new tires to put on there, blah, blah, blah. So I'll just keep running those for a while. But it's late Thursday night. Tomorrow I'm going to pick up the axle. Hopefully I can get started on it this weekend. And that is an episode I'm super excited to work on and to get out to you guys. So thanks for sticking through this one. I know this episode was a little all over the place. It was probably over the period of like 2 months from the start to the end. But thanks for sticking along. So if you guys are enjoying this, please consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And I will catch you guys on the next one. See you. One thing